In our last build, one of the biggest wastes of space and money was the hot water heater that we used. I personally never really used it. It was too much of a power hog. I would use it mostly just to kind of show it off in videos and whatnot. But other than that, I really never turned it on. So I was pretty reluctant to put another hot water heater in this van because I don't use them. That was until I came across this solution. So a while back, VanLand introduced the Incline water heater system, which is a heat transfer system that mounts underneath the bottom of your van and ties into the coolant system of your vehicle to heat the water. This isn't a new style of water tank by any means. The overlanding community has had these for a long time, so I have definitely read about them, but this is the first time I've seen one actually dedicated towards vans in general. Now, I am curious if you do have other options that are similar that you've used before, please drop a comment down below because I would love to see some of the other options out there. Now, installing this seems pretty intimidating because you do have to cut into your coolant system of your vehicle. So if that's something that you are really not wanting to do, then maybe look at hiring somebody or to do the install for you. Now, one other caveat to this, as far as I know, this only works on the diesel Sprinter vans. So if you are a Transit owner or a ProMaster owner, this system isn't going to work for you, but you might find inspiration from hopefully those people commenting down below, and maybe you can find your solution there. So let's talk about all of the hardware that needs to go in on the tank. We have two of these valves here, which I don't know if you guys will be able to make it out, but there's a little shark on there showing that it is a shark bite fitting. And essentially these are going to, I believe, the 1/2 inch NPT on one side and then the shark bite obviously on the other side. So these will screw in. There's two of these. So this is where our inlet and outlet will go. And then we have two of these, which are a larger fitting. And what this is where the tube goes on for the coolant line. And then you crimp or heat shrink that on. And then this will obviously screw into the unit itself. And then there's two of those. And then we have a plug, which goes in on the top there. I opted to actually throw in a heating element. This is a 12 volt heating element. I'm gonna wire this into a switch because I don't really always need this on. You can, I believe, set it off on the actual switch itself here, but since I already have that wired in from the last hot water heater, I'm just gonna go ahead and throw that in because I will very rarely use this. I drive the van a lot, so the driving is going to heat my water. I'm not really going to need to use this very often, but it's nice to have. And then lastly, we'll have a pressure relief valve just in case if it ever gets too pressurized inside the tank, it'll be able to release that water and pressure down onto the ground. And then they sent a roll of plumber's tape here so we can seal all of the connections. So what's nice about the heating element is it had a really thin thread that I was able to put some Teflon tape on, but there's actually a rubber gasket there too. I don't know if you can really see it. So that seals up nicely to the body. And then it makes sense on why they staggered the inlet and outlet for the hot water. Not only is, probably on the inside of the tank how they have the pump and circulation going, but it allows, the electrical side, because where you get it tight, it's pretty much right above where the plumbing inlet is here. See if you can see that, but it's out of the way. So pretty nice design, and yeah. Now the last piece that was sent in the kit is this accumulation tank. And I talked to the guys at VanLand where I purchased this. I believe they're the only carriers of this product right now, but so I reached out to them because in their install video, they don't talk about this accumulation tank at all. And in the main system for our plumbing, we do have an accumulator tank right off the pump, which allows for, essentially keeps your pump not having to, if there's any air bubbles or anything like that, that has that sense of water so the pump's not always running, is I guess a layman's way of putting it. But this needs to be installed on the cold water side, just so that when the cold water starts turning to hot water and there's expansion, the water has somewhere to go. And I'm gonna probably install this in the van, but I do need to get there is a piece I need to get that I'm gonna go to Home Depot and buy, and that is a NPT 1/2-inch 3-way valve with 2 shark bites. So, or Y valve or whatever you want to call it, or splitter. So that way I can have my cold water in, it can screw onto this, and then there's the water out, and there's no, so then if the water needs a place to go, it has a place to go. So we're gonna run to the store and get that. So there are 2 brackets that essentially will hold the water tank to the van. They are identical, and I will show you guys where they're gonna mount, because on this side, we're actually going to be using the same bolts from the fuel tank, and then on the other side, we're gonna be installing rib nuts or thread certs, you might hear them referred to as. I believe these are 5/16. So we will drill holes and place these into the side of the van. So I will show you guys under the van what I'm talking about, and then we are going to get to work. Okay, so this is the cavity that the hot water heater is going to live within. And if you look right there, we have a bolt, the bracket for our fuel tank, and then right here, we have a bolt for the fuel tank. So that's where one of the arms on the bracket will go, and then we will drill thread certs and place our thread certs into the pinch weld here. So, well, not pinch weld, but the side body here. And then we will have it as far forward as we can, still giving us access to run all of our lines here. This is where all of the coolant lines will come through, and then our plumbing will, I'll probably fish the plumbing back that direction, maybe up and over the fuel tank or something. I'll have to figure out how I want to do that, because I eventually need to get it over there by where our gray tank is, because that's where I have a hole for our drain and where the plumbing will come through. So I was actually pretty upset when I got to this point, because once I put the brackets in and the hot water tank in, I was able to actually slide it out, and it shouldn't do that. So I reached out to the people at VanLand, and they let me know that there are a few different modifications and solutions you can do to make this tank fit. In my humble opinion, I think that this is a major flaw. And I don't know if it's because I installed this on the driver's side of my vehicle, where their install video is on the passenger side of the vehicle. And so maybe those brackets are more engineered for the passenger side, but I have a water tank on that side. And with all the holes I already have drilled in the van, I couldn't relocate that tank. I don't believe VanLand themselves is developing this product. I believe they're getting it from somebody else, and maybe they're engineering it themselves to fit vans. I don't know. The only place I can find these incline heaters is on their website. So now I will say that their help has been incredible. So I do give them a thumbs up for that, because anytime I've reached out, they've actually went over and above providing assistance. So one of the things that they said to do was to put some thick foam of some sort on top of the tank to essentially expand the width or thickness of that tank. I luckily had some 3/4 inch closed cell foam left over from the last portions of our build. So I threw that on top, and it did cinch that tank up a lot better. They also showed me in the brackets, they are 2 small holes that you are supposed to be able to put some self-tapping screws into. Now, I didn't even think about doing this at the beginning because screwing into a water tank doesn't seem like the smartest idea, but they went ahead and told me the correct size to use, and I didn't have any issues with it leaking after the fact. Now, one other complaint I do have with the tank is my plug area, that small little 1/2 inch male plug that you saw me put in at the beginning of the video, caused us a lot of leaking headaches. So I reached out to the people at VanLand again and was asking, because I thought maybe my tank came with a crack in it or something, because whatever I did, I couldn't get it to stop leaking. And the solution they provided me is to put a specific type of pipe dope on the fitting instead of Teflon tape. Now, when I put this pipe dope on, which I will link down below, it did do a lot better job, but I did still have a small leak. So I went ahead and pulled that back out one more time, ran Teflon tape, and then the pipe dope on top of it, which is a hack I got from a plumbing friend of mine, and tightened that down, and I did not have any issues from there. So you may not have the same issues that I ran into, but I just wanted to give you guys that solution and some of my complaints about this system. Other than that, the install was pretty straightforward, and I'm really looking forward to seeing how it performs here in a little bit. So this part was almost impossible for me to film and to do the work at the same time. So my apologies for not getting all of the best and clearest shots. To access the spot that we're going to tap into with our coolant lines, I had to remove the air intake. From there, you're able to see the area that we are looking to cut into. I then ran my new coolant lines from behind the heat shield and under the vehicle, where I fished it back to the tank's location. I then cut the line at the appropriate length so I could use the rest for the return loop. I then grabbed a few clamps and clamped off each end of the coolant line so that no coolant would escape when it was cut, but I also put down a towel just in case a little bit did leak out. That way I didn't get it all over the engine compartment. Now this part was actually really difficult for me to get on camera because the fittings were actually pretty snug, so it took some force and even a little bit of lubrication to make sure they got down inside of the line. There are 2 right-angled barbed fittings that you are going to put one in each of the tubes that you cut. From there, the new lines that you ran from underneath the vehicle will then tap into one or the other of that barbed line. It doesn't matter which one goes where because all you're doing is creating a loop. So just make sure that it makes sense on how it lays out in the engine compartment. And then from there, I used more of those heat shrink clamps and I started doing some line management by attaching it to the chassis so that way they stayed up and out of the way. I then topped off the system with some more coolant. And then fired up the vehicle and let it get up to temperature. After driving it around for about 100 miles, I did have to put more coolant in. So make sure you drive around with some of the coolant inside of your cab. That way you can replenish it when the time comes. I'm very excited to see how this solution works for us going forward. Now, one of the things I'm probably going to do is inside of my van is throw in a ball valve to shut off water to go from going underneath the van. I am a little concerned with the pipes freezing, so we will have to see how that works in the future. Now, thankfully, everything is underneath the van, so it's not that big of a detriment, but I want to be able to shut that off in case they do freeze, that I can go ahead and keep using my system that is inside of the vehicle primarily, and which will then be able to keep me off the grid. Now, in the tank, I do have that heating element that I put in. That's a 12-volt heating element. So I put that in just in case I am sitting for a while and I need to keep the tank from freezing. But frankly, that's not how I personally use my camper van. I am a nature photographer, so I'm on the road a lot and I keep moving often. So that is why this solution stood out to me, because I can heat my water by driving and it essentially doesn't cost me any power at all. But if I do find myself sitting for a while, that is why I did wire in that heating element. But I very highly doubt that I will use that. Now, the other thing to note, though, is you are getting roughly 180 degree water coming from that tank. That's about on average what my Sprinter van operates at temperature wise. So you need to probably put a mixer valve in line to make sure you're mixing your hot water with cold water. Now, you can either do that with an anti-scalding mixer valve in line where before your devices actually get the hot water, it's already mixed down to a more safe temperature. Or you just need to make sure that at your sinks or showers or whatever, you have adequate mixer valves in line. So that way you don't really run into scalding yourself. Now, I haven't gotten to test this extensively yet, but I will here very soon because I'm going to be on the road a lot this fall and winter. If you are new to the channel, I guess I should introduce myself. It's kind of rude of me. My name is Riley Clark. I am a nature photographer and filmmaker based out of Las Vegas, Nevada. This channel primarily focuses on my time out in nature as a photographer and filmmaker. So if you enjoy watching travel content and outdoor nature content, then maybe consider hitting the subscribe button down below, or you can click on this video right here to watch one of my previous videos with the old version of the van, and it will give you a taste for what is to come coming up. Also, you can click right here to subscribe to the channel if you are not already, and right here if you are curious about maybe checking out my website and some of my photography work.